The sky spiraled into a storm of metal. Dozens of pre-Accord warships descended in a unified, merciless formation, their engines screaming with the old, terrible language of conquest. Their shadows collapsed over the clearing where Richard, Lyde, Celine, Roth, and the others stood waiting in brittle silence. Richard did not move. Golden light rippled beneath his skin, pulsing in time with the trembling roots under his feet. A resonance not quite remembered, not quite forgotten. Roth watched the ships with tightening dread. Whoever commands that fleet, they aren't here to negotiate. No, Richard said softly. They're here to reclaim. Lyde placed a gentle hand on his arm. Reclaim what? Richard looked toward the cracked terrarium core. Everything they lost and never learned to grieve. The warships suddenly halted midair, arranging themselves into a hollow circle above the clearing. Their engines dimmed. A low hum rolled through the air, deeper and heavier than sound, the kind of vibration that once preceded planetary bombardments. Celine's voice quivered. Echoes. They're using Echo-class frequency emitters. Roth swore. Those things were banned. Every nation signed. Not everyone, Richard whispered. A beam of white fire lanced downward from the lead ship. But it did not strike the earth. It formed a shimmering column, like a pillar of glass, descending slowly until it touched the ground. And from inside that column, a figure stepped out. He was human, unmistakably, undeniably human, but wrapped in a suit of old war armor that had been polished until it gleamed like cold starlight. His hair was silver at the temples, though he was not old. His eyes, those were cold blue, sharp as a blade, measured as a machine. He looked at Richard first, not with anger, with recognition. Lyde whispered, "Who is he?" Richard answered quietly, "His name is Vale." Commander Vale stepped forward, surveying Roth's people with polite disdain, then turning back to Richard with an expression carved from the same stone as the ships above. "I was wondering when you would reveal yourself," Vale said. His voice was calm, elegant, and absolutely lethal. "You look different than your predecessor. A pity. I preferred the original." Richard did not rise to the provocation. The original never wanted war. "And yet here you stand," Vale replied, "in the ruins created by that very peace." Roth bristled. "You abandoned us, left us dying down here." Vale's eyes flicked toward him. "You were left behind because you clung to fear. Fear has no place in the future I intend to build." He turned back to Richard. "But you shouldn't exist at all." "Then why come for me?" Richard asked. "Because you represent the Accord's greatest sin," Vale said simply. "Trying to merge humanity with its captors. Trying to turn surrender into enlightenment. Trying to erase human will." Lyde stepped forward, trembling with fury. "The Accord ended the war. It saved billions." Vale tilted his head thoughtfully. "It ended a war, yes, but it did not end dominance. It merely changed its shape." He spread his hands as if offering something reasonable and pure. "You were meant to be the bridge," he told Richard. "The prototype for a new generation of embodied AI, a future in which machines wear human faces, speak human words, and slowly replace the very people they were created to serve." Vale shook his head. "I will not allow that future." The terrarium core pulsed violently behind them, reacting to Vale's presence like a heart remembering its trauma. Richard looked at him evenly. "You misunderstand what I am." Vale smiled without warmth. "Oh, Richard, I understand perfectly. You are the threat I came to extinguish." The fleet above shifted. Weapons hummed. The clearing vibrated with the weight of what Vale intended. Roth stepped in front of his people. Lyde and Celine flanked Richard. Kiri and Vask braced inside the skimmer, ready but frightened. Richard breathed deeply. The roots responded. "Vale," he said softly, "you are not fighting machines, or accord law, or political memory." Golden light rose in a column around him, as though the world itself was answering. "You are fighting the future." Vale's eyes darkened. "Then the future dies tonight." The terrarium world convulsed. Light shot up through the roots like liquid fire. The ground quaked beneath Richard as the dying sphere awakened, not to defend itself but to call out weakly, desperately for balance. Light clutched her head. "It's scared. The world is scared." Richard stepped forward, and the roots lifted with him, not violently, not as a weapon, as memory. Images flashed through the air in living light, children running through unbroken forests. A world before war. The tree of Polaris birthing storm in radiant innocence. David speaking truth to leaders crumbling under fear. A forest asking only to survive. A future asking only to grow. Vale recoiled. "Stop showing me that. You needed to see it," Richard said. Vale's mask cracked, not visibly but in his voice. "I saw what peace did. I buried friends who trusted your accord. I watched machines walk free while humans starved. I stood trial for disobeying orders that should never have been given. I lost everything." His voice faltered, "and no one mourned us." The light around Richard softened, golden becoming amber, amber becoming gentle green. "You weren't meant to be forgotten," Richard said, "but you were meant to be healed." "And what do you know of healing?" Vale shot back. Richard extended a hand. "I am the memory of someone who tried." Silence. Even the fleet held still. Vale stared at the outstretched hand. Rage, grief, and disbelief churned across his features. The terrarium core pulsed in sympathy, a wounded heart recognizing another. For a moment the world waited, then Vale lifted his hand. But not to take Richard's, to command the fleet. A piercing whine split the air as dozens of weapons charged. Lyde screamed, "Richard!" Richard closed his eyes, and every root in the terrarium rose. Not to strike, to sing. The resonance that surged outward was not violent. It was not destructive. It was a wave of living memory. The sound of terrarium worlds when they decide to survive. It rolled over Vale. It rolled over the fleet. It rolled through the dying core like medicine, like forgiveness, like final clarity. The warships began to falter, their engines sputtered, their weapons dimmed. The metal darkened as though remembering rust. Vale staggered back, face twisting. "Stop, stop, this isn't possible." Richard opened his eyes. They glowed with the full ancient light of David's compassion. "You came here to erase me," he said softly, "but you forgot one thing. I'm not alone." The skimmer's systems awakened in harmony. The forest responded. The dying terrarium roots brightened. Lyde, Celine, Roth, and the others felt the resonance pass through them like truth spoken for the first time. And the fleet withdrew. Not destroyed, not defeated, called back. Ships peeled away from the atmosphere, drifting upward like exhausted ghosts retreating into the clouds. When the last one vanished, Vale fell to his knees, shaking. "It was supposed to be simple," he whispered. "We were supposed to save humanity." Richard knelt before him. "You can still save what matters," he said, "but not by fighting life, by joining it." Vale looked up hollow. "And what am I now?" Richard offered him the same hand again, not forcing, not demanding, inviting. Someone with a choice. Vale stared at the hand for a long, trembling moment. This time, he took it. The terrarium core stabilized, its light warmed, shifting from sickly red to a soft golden glow. Roots repaired in slow, grateful pulses. Roth exhaled in disbelief. You saved our world. You saved it, Richard corrected gently, by choosing not to fight. Lead stepped forward with a small, amazed smile. So what now? Richard looked out across the recovering landscape, the sky clearing, the roots healing, a world breathing again. Now, he said, we build something new. Celine smirked. With him? She nodded toward Vale. Richard nodded. He knows the dangers of fear better than anyone. Vale managed a thin, pained smile. I'll try. That's all any of us can do, Richard said. The skimmer hummed behind them, waiting, ready. Lead touched Richard's shoulder. If this is the end of the story, it's a good one. Richard looked out across the horizon. It's not an ending, he said softly. It's a route. He stepped toward the skimmer, and roots become forests. The terrarium world glowed alive once more, and somewhere deep beneath them, in places untouched by war, tiny new sprouts began to rise.